Hello friends, thanks for tuning in. In this video, let's conquer that old bad habit of procrastination. I'll stop living with this broken silverware tray and build this fancy new one. And you can subscribe to my channel, I guess. Thanks.
Welcome to the shop, everyone. Nathaniel here. Now, before we toss out that old silverware tray and jump into the new build, let's take a look at the old tray, see where it failed and why it failed, and then how we can improve on that design. All right, let's check it out. Okay, this is your typical store-bought bamboo silverware tray. It's got some dividers, so it's got a long space here. Now, these aren't supposed to come out, actually. They're going there like that. Now, the reason for the failure, well, I think it stems from this long piece here. First off, it's very thin material, but also it's not glued or nailed down to the bottom panel. And I think that is the main thing going on here, is that it has the ability to flex. And with use over time, it's become separated pretty easily from this cross divider here, and then this gets pushed up and say goodbye to these dividers. So we can definitely improve on this design. Let's take a look at what I've come up with. So here it is. It's similar in design to this old one in that it has the 3 dividers up front and the long one here, but in the back I've just done the same thing as I did in the front, as opposed to this one, which has the 2 going across. Now, what makes this better than this? Well, thicker material for one, it's a little bit heavier duty. And this piece, I talked about how on this one it was not secured to the bottom. Well, this one is secured to the bottom. So over time, yes, it will get abused, but I believe that this will stand true and not be pushed out that way. So this center divider is not going anywhere, which means that these are not going anywhere. So I think this will stand the test of time, and it looks really beautiful as well. All right, let's get to it.
The first crosscut sled I made for a table saw, I used this cherry for the front and back fences, and I've since built a new crosscut sled, and this cherry became available and was perfect for this project. After cutting to rough lengths, I head over to the bandsaw and rip off any excess material. Next, I'll be resawing to get some 5/8 and 1/2 inch pieces. A little cleanup and final thicknessing done at the planer. At the joiner, I make an edge straight and 90 degrees to both faces. At the table saw, I rip everything down to 2.5 inches. With a stop block set up at the crosscut sled, I can cut most of my parts to length. I'm going to take a quick diversion here and work on the bottom panel. The jointer, I am just preparing it for resaw. I'm aiming to get a couple boards that will be book matched and make up a 1/4 inch panel. I'm going to do the blue tape clamping method here. This stuff is pretty cool because it is kind of stretchy and it pulls the joint together pretty well. So I do the bottom side, flip it over, and apply the glue. Clean up the excess and apply more tape. So I'll let that dry and get back to the other stuff, which right now is a test cut. I want to see that I have the right dado stack in. That'll do. It's good to double check and make sure that everything adds up to the correct overall length. Here I'm adding a recess in all of the perimeter boards that will accept the bottom panel. Now I'm doing it this way for the sake of convenience, but the downside to this method is you get a corner that looks a little bit like this. Well, exactly like this. But that's okay because it will be completely hidden within the drawer. So I'm going to live with it. So after some layout, I go ahead and cut the rest of the dados. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone, or in this case, 1 cut 2 boards. So this is one method of doing a half lap joint, and the result I'm going for is this. It's a super strong and mechanically sound joint. Now let's see if all these dados and rabbits and half laps can actually fit together. One thing that this dry assembly has revealed to me is that I need to rip these interior divider pieces down 1/4 inch so they don't get in the way of the bottom panel. Now to add a little form and function to this silverware tray, I made this template that I'll use as a guide for the 3 dividers. Just using a little double-sided tape to affix it to the workpiece. Cut out the bulk of material on the bandsaw. And with a 3/4 inch blade installed on this bandsaw, the turning radius on these cuts is about as good as my full-size pickup truck. But it gets the job done, and I can then remove the rest of the material at the router table with a flush trim bit. Before the glue up, I add some 1/4 inch roundovers. I make sure to stop before joint intersections. With the tray assembled again, I can take measurements for the bottom panel. But first, some cleanup passes at the drum sander. With these types of woodworking projects, I find it's best to get as much sanding done as possible before the final assembly. The rabbet joints in this project will get reinforced with screws. So I'm using a 3/8 bit to countersink, and those will later be filled with 3/8 dowels. Now I can finally get this thing assembled. Since this bottom panel is so thin, I'm not concerned too much about wood movement, so I go ahead and glue and brad nail it down. At the edge sander, I can get nice rounded corners, which I feel like goes well with the overall look of this tray. I'm using a trim router to add the rest of the 1/4 inch roundovers. You can see some of the burn marks the router left in the corners, and that's probably because this is an old and dull router bit, so I have to do a lot of hand sanding to get that cleaned up. But I have to say, taking the time to sand on any woodworking project is well worth it. The finish I'm using is called Tried and True. It's a polymerized linseed oil and beeswax, and it's great for these little projects. Wipe it on, let it soak in, wipe it off. And when it comes to finishes, that's kind of as simple as it gets. Hey, I think it turned out pretty cool. Let's load it up. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This was a blast to make, and I'll see you next time.